Our first task is to learn how to open files. We're going to start with a Readme file that we'll download from the Learn Enough website using curl. Recall which curl from Learn Enough command line to be dangerous tells us that in fact curl exists on the system. We also covered it in the last section when we downloaded Shakespeare sonnets. In this case, we're going to download a file called readme.md. Readme all caps, MD, which is the file name extension for Markdown, which is the kind of file this is. There we go, it's there. You can even cat it. You can see it's not very big. All right, let's open this thing in Atom. The way to do that is with the Atom command that you set up in the last section. You can do atom readme.md, and here it is. You can see I had Shakespeare sonnets already loaded, and this is a second tab here, so I'm just going to close this tab because we don't need it. But this is what happens when you have multiple files open in the same window. All right, this may or may not be what you see. Actually, let's get rid of this here. This may or may not be what you see. There are two options here. I'm going to show you this. So there's this here, toggle soft wrap. This is what the file looks like with soft wrap, also called word wrap, turned off. The text in this file is actually one long line. You can go to the end of the line here like that. We'll be covering those sorts of cursor movements later in this section. So it's a long line. And this is really inconvenient for editing. So what I'm going to do is enable soft wrap. Any professional grade text editor will be able to handle this sort of situation where you're writing prose, say a Markdown file, or in the case of the Learn Enough text editor to be dangerous source, a LaTeX file, or HTML, or anything else like that. If you look at the bottom right of the editor here, you can see that it says GitHub Markdown. Because the file ends with .md, Atom has recognized that this is a Markdown file. One of the effects this has is that Atom highlights the syntax. It's kind of subtle here. In this case, you can see this is an open bracket. It's very subtle. This is a URL here. Again, open bracket, close bracket. This is the way Markdown represents a link. It's the link text and then the URL. So this is a particularly subtle example of highlighting, but we'll be seeing lots of examples of more dramatic, higher contrast highlighting later in this tutorial. There's one final thing I'd like to show you with respect to Atom and Markdown documents. As noted in the README itself, Markdown is a plain text format that's both easy to read and easy to convert to HTML. We can go to the Help menu item and type Preview. We can see here that there's a Markdown Preview function, and in fact there's even a keyboard shortcut for it. So let's click here first. This is a two-pane view. You can see here on the left that there's a sample document in Markdown format, and on the right there's a rendered version of it. We can close the preview by toggling back. Before I use the menu, this time I'll use the keyboard shortcut. It's Shift-Control-M. Go back here. There we go. For completeness, I'd like to show you how to open the same README file in Sublime Text and on Cloud 9. Let's do Sublime Text first. The usual command line command for Sublime Text is subl. You can see this is quite similar to Atom. Again, there are two tabs here. I'll just get rid of the sonnets there. And like Atom, Sublime Text has identified the kind of file this is, in this case Markdown. It also has syntax highlighting, in this case significantly more noticeable than the highlighting used by Atom. Finally, let's look at Cloud 9. This is running in the cloud, but there's a full Linux virtual machine here, so we can run curl, as you can see. And let's do the same one. Now if you look at the file system navigator here in Cloud9, we can double click on it to open it like that. Now I used to think this was the only way to open files in Cloud9, and I said so in the written tutorial, but I got a note from one of the readers who said, actually, there is a command line command in Cloud9. It's called C9. That's pretty cool. Now you might notice at this point that word wrap is turned off, and I didn't know how to turn it on. I had to figure it out. This is a classic application of technical sophistication. So in this case, I just kind of clicked around and eventually found View, Wrap Lines. There it goes. Again, like Atom and like Sublime, the Cloud9 editor recognizes this as Markdown, and there's syntax highlighting as a result. By the way, if you're running the Linux virtual machine, exactly the same series of steps should work. And there we go. Again, Markdown is detected, and there's syntax highlighting. In this case, actually quite a bit more noticeable than the highlighting in the native version that I'm running in OS X. Learning not to be too concerned about little discrepancies like this is part of learning technical sophistication.